achieved.
It will be very hard to believe that anyone's actually still listening to my show, A, because it's been 3 weeks since our last UFC event, and B, because the last UFC event was a absolute fucking dog's breakfast on my part. My prediction record was horrible. I think I went 3-9 overall, and the bet packs were absolutely terrible. But if you check out my post-fight recap, which I called the BS report, you can probably go through and see that things could have easily gone the absolute other way in multiple scenarios. So it is what it is. It's the MMA game, and that's why we get the opportunity to rebound here on the next upcoming show. Welcome back to Kamikaze Overdrive MMA Predictions. As always, I am your host, Scott Johnson, and on this episode of the show, we're breaking down the upcoming UFC Fight Night 85 event, which will take place in Zagreb, Croatia, on April 10th. It's actually an Sunday afternoon show, so don't miss out on any of that. And it's a huge card, 6 main card fights, and the reason it's a huge card is 4 of those 6 main card fights are taking place in the heavyweight division, including our very fun and exciting main event. I'll be giving you all of my predictions in a moment. All of my preliminary predictions, as always, are available at kamikazeoverdrive.net. You'll also be able to pick up my bet packs if you're willing to roll the dice on that one, take a shot. I'll be selling $12 for just a regular single bet pack for the night, or if you want to pick up the next 5, I believe it is, I'm going to be selling that for, I think, $42, so you get a whole bet pack for free, and then half off a second one, so it's a pretty good deal, so certainly consider investing in that. A couple other things you want to take a look at. I'm looking for female writers, so if you're a female fan of MMA and you'd like to take a shot at either predicting fights or writing about MMA in general, I'm certainly open to that, so please contact me through the contact form on my website. Also, I've been doing some graphic design work in my downtime with Global Warriors FC. You'll probably seen on my site, at least on my Twitter feed and Facebook, I've posted some of the posters I've made and the flyers I've made for a pretty awesome event. It's upcoming on May 28th from the Brantford Civic Center. You want to check out, get some tickets. They're over at ticketscene.ca. The event will feature Josh Hill fighting in the main event for the inaugural bantamweight title, Alex Ricci fighting for the lightweight title in the co-main event. Also, Ultimate Fighter winner Jonathan Brookins will be taking on Lyndon Whitlock on the main card. Several other top upcoming Canadian MMA talent on the card as well, including Malcolm X Gordon and TJ The Truth Laramie also competing on the card. So certainly worth checking out, and keep an eye on my site, my Twitter feed. I'll be posting a lot of information there. We've got 6 awesome main card fights to get to for this first event in Croatia, so let's get to that first matchup. We might finish up with the heavyweights, but we're going to actually open up in the lightest division in the UFC, as the women's strawweights will open the card. The number 9th ranked Maryna Moroz of the Ukraine with a record of 6-1 takes on Cristina Barbie Stanciu of Romania with an undefeated record of 5-0. Now taking a look at this matchup as my notes just quickly disappear. Here we go. Stanciu is debuting in the UFC. Only 5 pro bouts. She won the RFX flyweight title in her 3rd pro bout, which is 125 pounds. And she's fought 4 times in 2015, and all 5 of her pro bouts have taken place since 2014. So she's 5 fights in, and her career is very, very young. For Moroz, she's coming off the first loss of her pro career after a huge upset over Jojo Calderwood in her UFC debut. She did win 6 straight to kick off her MMA run. Physically, the Ukrainian 2 inches taller. Stanciu is 4 years younger. Very similar spots in their careers, with the exception of Moroz holding the edge in UFC experience, having fought twice and fought Calderwood, and then of course Blaydes, who went on to fight the title, so some high-level opposition. Now for Stanciu, her last 3 opponents, pretty admirable. 11-9 combined record considering the depth of the division. Only one fighter, though, coming with an over 500 record at 5-2, so that's kind of where she gets that slightly above 500 competition. Now, she's an accomplished wushu fighter. Her record looks as this. She has 1 knockout, 3 submission wins, and 1 decision. All of her finishes have come in the first round, including 3 straight submission wins heading into this bout, 2 of which came by armbar. Now, Moroz is a master of sport in boxing and kickboxing. She comes from a striking background, but she has just a single knockout compared to 5 submission wins, all of which are coming by armbar, including catching Jojo Calderwood. Her loss to Valerie Letourneau was the first loss outside, was the first time she fought actually outside of the first round since her pro debut, which she one as well. Now for Stanciu, when you look at her, what she does, she's a very exciting fighter. There's a YouTube bout I posted on Twitter on my Facebook group, which was fantastic. She's very aggressive. She is exceptionally big-time power in her hand. She's very aggressive, throws a very hard push kick to both the body and the face right down the middle. In one of her pre-UFC fights, she landed a massive head kick that dropped her opponent, and she transitioned quickly to an armbar. Now, it did take her a while to eventually get the tap, but she was on it, held onto it, and eventually submitted her opponent. She will throw some range-finding low kicks, not a ton of power or damage behind them, and she can do some, she will attack with the clinch, tie clinch or tie plum, and some knee strikes in close. She moves relatively well and really rips that overhand right, but, it's a little bit wild and sloppy when she opens up and can put herself off balance. In her last fight, she stood in trade, swung very wild and crazy. She was able to land. She's willing to take a strike to land. So as I said, she's kind of an entertaining fighter and very crowd-pleasing when she does throw. She looks to simply absorb shots and overwhelm her opponents with her power and walk forward until they eventually relent. The big issue I saw with her is after that first round of her last matchup, she started to slow down. And she ultimately, a fight that she was having a lot of success in early, she won by split decision because she was throwing single strikes and really taxed her gas tank. That's a big question mark. Now, for Moroz, she throws a nice left jab. She has a decent 1-2, and she'll follow it up with a body kick. Lots of body kicks, in fact, is what she will target. And that's something, if you can attack a fighter who's got a questionable gas tank, attack them to the midsection, that can certainly compromise their ability to fight deep into matchups. She was able to hurt Valerie Turner with the right hand and really put her on wobbly legs there for a second. The only issue with her leg kicks, going back to that for a second, is she was throwing them without much setup, and we were seeing Letourneau counter them with the right hand. And it started to see Valerie was actually backing her off a little bit, and that was, having some issues with Moroz not being able to consistently come forward. If Moroz does get taken down, she will attack off her back. She tied Letourneau up with a triangle at one point and attack with that. And overall, that's the question, is if Moroz goes on her back, could she possibly catch an over-aggressive opponent from top position? Big question, a possibility. The way I look at things here, Moroz is the more technical striker. But how she will deal with the aggression of her opponent is a big question mark. Again, I said she might catch that over-aggression with an arm bar, but, I look at Stanciu and I like that style as far as being entertaining, but I don't know how it translates at this level of competition. It's a step up in competition for her. She formerly fought at 125 pounds and above, actually fighting at lightweight, I believe. She's cutting down to 115 pounds, and how she'll fare outside of the first round she can't finish Moroz is a major question mark. I think Moroz survives the initial onslaught of Stanciu, starts to see her slow down. She hits that wall against better competition, and my prediction is Maryna Moroz to defeat Cristina Stanciu by submission. Fight number 2 in the main card takes place in the UFC's light heavyweight division as the returning Igor the Duke Pokrajac of Croatia, 25 wins, 12 losses, a 1-0 contest, takes on Poland's Jan Blachowicz, 18 wins and 5 losses. I'm sure I've said this multiple ways, so I'm going to go with Blachowicz for this show. Now, this is his return to the UFC for Pokrajac. He went 3-0 after getting cut from Zuffa. Had lost 5 in straight, which included a no contest, which probably kept him around, which was a loss against Joey Beltran that got flipped. He is fighting at home, so that there's that aspect too. Probably helped him to get called in. For example, this card was taking place in Texas. He doesn't get the call for this matchup. Of his 3 fights he did take, he had 1 win. It took place at heavyweight. He fought a fighter with an 0-3 record, and he was fighting him in their second pro fight at the time. Another guy was 3-3, another guy was 4-2. So certainly lower level competition to get these 3 wins and get back on track. For Blachowicz, has dropped back-to-back bouts in the UFC after debuting with a win, which extended at the time a 6-fight winning streak, which had some noteworthy names included. The Polish fighter is 2 inches taller, he'll have a 4-inch reach advantage, and he also is the younger man by 4 years. The experience advantage does lie with Igor at 41 total fights to 23, and he also has 12 UFC fights under his belt. Now, Igor Pokrajac, the knockout losses are starting to mount. He's lost 6 times by knockout, including the last 2 losses of his UFC run, his original UFC run that eventually got him cut. He does have big power in his hands, 15 knockouts, but he hasn't knocked anybody out since December of 2011. That's a long time. He has 9 submission wins, but he hasn't submitted anybody since mid-2012. Against at least legit competition, excluding those individuals he fought outside of the UFC, and he's 4-4 in decisions, so it's not exactly an impressive record of late. For Blachowicz, 5 wins by knockout, 7 wins by submission. He is 6-3 in the scorecards. He has been knocked out and submitted once in each of his losses. Now, both guys have negative striking exchange rates. So meaning they let their opponents be the busier man, but the thing to consider here is Igor Pokrajac has a much bigger sample size when looking at those numbers, which is very concerning. He averages just 2.24 strikes landed per minute. That's very low, even for a light heavyweight. Now, with Blachowicz, though, he has struggled at times to find his offensive stride. Even when he defeated Ilir Latifi with that brutal body kick. He wasn't throwing a ton of volume and doing a lot with his strikes. He was moving forward, picking his spots, but he wasn't overwhelming him. It was a type of output that you could lose a fight with, without taking too much damage, without looking too much out of place, just not doing enough. There are questions though about Pokrajac's fight IQ. When he fought Joey Beltran in a fight he ultimately lost, he sat in a clinch, which was clearly where Beltran wanted to fight that fight, and he let him get pressed against the cage and lost as a result. Against Vinny Magalesh, he grappled with Vinny and eventually got submitted, which was an absolute mistake. He tends to be way too inactive when he fights at range as well, and then suddenly he'll rush forward with a wild attack and leave his chin wide open, and for a guy with a questionable chin, that's also a major issue. When Blachowicz fought Anderson, he struggled with the grappling of him. He couldn't out-muscle Jimmy Manuwa, who are two guys who I see with different skill sets, but certainly far above what Igor Pokrajac has to offer at this point in his career. The way I look at this, Blachowicz is the much bigger man. He will find success along the cage, clinching up and holding his opponent, holding Pokrajac there. He'll score some takedowns as well, and I think he will be the more active man. He won't be afraid to let his hands go, knowing what Igor has to offer as far as his chin is concerned. Again, his chin is still a major concern. You know, he hasn't won at a high level of competition in a long time, even though he is fighting at home, which makes him tempting to take as far as an upset is concerned. I think this is one of those fights that could very well be a snoozer. It might not, it could end in an early knockout, but my prediction is Jan Blachowicz to defeat Igor Pokrajac by decision. Now we move to the first of 4 consecutive heavyweight bouts on the main card, as Timothy the Mustache Johnson, that's not his middle name, or nickname, but it should be, 9 wins and 2 losses, takes on the debuting Marcin Tybura of Poland with a current record of 13 wins and 3 losses. This is the debut for Tybura. He has a recent victory over Damian Grabowski, who debuted not that long ago in a loss to Derrick Lewis. Tybura went 7-1 under the M1 banner, including capturing their heavyweight championship and winning a tournament in 2013. He is 1 fight removed from his first pro loss, which came via cut stoppage in a super fight against the M1 light heavyweight champion, in a fight that Tybura was winning right up until he got cut, examined, and the doctor stopped the fight. For Timothy Johnson, 2 UFC fights under his belt. He stopped his opponent in his debut. He dropped a decision to Jared Rosholt, the recently released Jared Rosholt, in a fight where it was kind of a grinding affair. Rosholt got the better of it, but then Timothy almost rallied at the end and nearly stopped him. Both guys 6'3", both have a 77-inch reach. Johnson usually comes in around 265 pounds. Tybura will be about 250, so it could be 10 to 12 pounds advantage for Johnson there. Same age. Overall experience goes to the Polish fighter with 14 pro fights, just 11 against Johnson, but considering Johnson's UFC experience, it kind of balances it out a little bit. Now looking at Tim Johnson, he's an All-American Division II wrestler. 5 wins by TKO, 4 wins by submission. He has 1 loss by submission, and 1 loss by decision as well. He has 7 first-round finishes, and he has 2-2 in fights that go beyond the opening 5 minutes. For Tybura, BJJ brown belt, 5 wins by knockout, 6 submission wins, 2 decision victories as well. His only loss coming via that TKO due to a doctor stoppage. He has 9 first-round finishes. He has a pretty solid 4-1 record after the opening round. Of his submissions, 3 have come by rear naked choke. He does have 2 TKO victories due to retirement and 1 due to leg injury, so that shows you maybe he's not the knockout artist that those numbers might suggest. And when looking at his style, it's not hard to see what his MO is. He is a takedown-oriented fighter. He likes to work in the clinch where he'll go for body locks and trips. His BJJ, his Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, is far better than his wrestling is. But look for him, if he looks for a more wrestling-based shot, it will be a single leg. Grab that single leg and kind of keep turning the corner and running the pipe until he's able to drive his opponent into the mat. One thing to keep in mind here, though, he spent the majority of his career fighting inside of a cage, inside of a ring, not a cage. That might help him out in this. If he looks to try and clinch up, that also might cost him as well if he's not used to that environment. He will work predominantly from guard, even though he will, he can pass, but look for him to do some damage from guard. Smothering fighter. If he gets the opportunity, he'll try to scramble and work to back mount or just simply a better position. I like the way what I saw from rolling with his opponent when he didn't have full control, and the way he's able to roll and reposition, keep moving, throw strikes in there, and there's always seems to be a constant threat of a submission, which is multifaceted, and that's definitely what you want to see from a fighter who wants to fight on the ground. His striking overall seems fairly average at best. Probably his best vertical work will become as in the form of dirty boxing, where he'll be able to wear his opponent down. But in his last matchup against a very big light heavyweight, it seemed like he was actually on the wrong end of getting worn down at times, especially later in that fight where he was starting to slow down significantly. Now for Tim Johnson, he's a very similar style. Clinch, dirty box, grind, takedown, smother, wear guys out. He showed a good level change against Abdurhimov in his debut, when he eventually took him down with a big takedown. He was able to quickly move right to mount, postured up, landed good strikes, got the stoppage in the final seconds of the opening round. When he fought Jared Rochat, he gave Rochat all kinds of trouble as far as the grappling exchanges were concerned. He forced him to clinch positions, and he was taken down a couple of times, but he did have success shutting that down. Keep in mind, in this fight, he will have the technical advantage as far as wrestling is concerned, and he will be the bigger man as well. Tim Johnson, though, he is very willing to trade. He has some pop in his hands, and he has a relatively good chin. His cardio, actually, despite his appearance, his cardio is fairly decent. And he was getting busted up by Jared Rochat, but as I said, he almost stopped him in the final frame, and he landed his own decent shots. This fight should ultimately come down to a battle of top position. The loser will be the man who spends more time on the bottom in a position they are traditionally not comfortable with. Johnson overall is the better wrestler. He has a size advantage. He has the experience advantage as well, and I would go as far as to say he has the cardio advantage based on what I have seen. I expect this first round to be very close, lots of clinch fighting. I think the aggression of Johnson while striking could help him edge it out if that is the case. I think Tim takes over in rounds 2 and 3 as Tybura struggles with the size, the debut factor, the cardio, all of those things weighing into, on him. And I just haven't been overly impressed. Nothing against them, but some of the European fighters coming in just seem to struggle against some of the bigger, more wrestling-oriented fighters in the UFC, the Americans. Tybura seemed to struggle with the minimal amount of damage he took in his last fight, and kind of seemed almost like he broke leading up to the stoppage. And it wasn't a huge cut, but he certainly seemed very discouraged by it. I think Johnson's able to beat him up, and my prediction is Timothy Johnson to defeat Marcin Tybura by TKO. Heavyweight bout number 2 in the main card takes place in the heavyweight division. That would make sense, folks. As Francis the Predator Ngannou, I believe I'm saying that correctly, with a record of 6 wins and 1 loss, takes on the debuting Curtis Razor Blaydes, undefeated at 5 wins and 0 defeats. Now, this is Blaydes is making his first UFC appearance. He's filling in on approximately 1 month's notice for another debuting fighter who had to drop out of this matchup. He last fought on February 19th, so less than 2 months removed from when he will be making his UFC debut. For Ngannou, he made his UFC debut in his last matchup, which he won by second round TKO. Now, both men are very, very big heavyweights, the kind of the archetype heavyweight that you want to see. Ngannou coming in at 6'4", Blaydes coming in 6'4", 6'5", depending on what source you take. Blaydes will actually be 15 pounds heavier, coming in at the limit at 265 pounds, and he's also 5 years younger. Now, Francis, all 6 of his wins have come by stoppage, 3 by knockout, 3 by submission, 3 coming in the first round, and he has never gone beyond the second round of a fight. For Blaydes, all 5 of his wins have come by knockout, all 5 of his pro wins, including 2 in the first round, but his last 3 fights have gone longer. He went twice into the second round for knockouts, and his last matchup he went all the way into the third round before eventually finishing his opponent. He's a national junior collegiate wrestler as well, comes from a solid background. He was actually very successful at that level. He has a pretty noteworthy win over Bellator's Lorenzo Hood, which was his pro debut, or second pro fight, I believe. And for Hood, it was his 8th, so certainly they weren't in the same position. So that's a fairly noteworthy win. It was actually his pro debut. Last 3 wins have come over opposition with a combined record of 14-8, so that's a pretty good mark for heavyweights at the regional level. Now for Blaydes, as he's wrestling oriented, he is very big, he's very strong, he moves exceptionally well. Look for him to try and drive through opponents. He will lock up submissions. He has an exceptionally strong top game, very athletic overall, and as I said, big slams are part of his attack. He does have power in his hands, but he is rather unrefined with his striking, relatively sloppy, and he will be at a disadvantage against Ngannou. He does not want to stand and trade with him. Now for Ngannou, he comes from a grappling background as well, but in his last fight, he spent some time in his back, and I think he lost the first round as a result. He was taken down off a leg kick, didn't do a heck of a lot off his back to get up. Also, in one of his final pre-UFC bouts, he was taken down pretty early in that matchup, was able to power out of that position, but certainly you want to see a guy who is a big, strong man like him, not spending too much time on his back. He did land a nice takedown of his own in his debut, but it didn't really result to a whole heck of a lot. He did unload with some ground and pound, but ultimately the finish came on the feet. When he got on his back, he seemed to get stuck there. He was trying to move a little bit, but he didn't have a lot of success, and he was pinned there by a smaller man, not known for his overall grappling stand-up. He eventually didn't get stood up by anything more than a referee stand-up, so that certainly is something concerning that he couldn't get up on his own. When his opponent used a shot for takedowns later on, he did a better job of using underhooks and getting low. His opponent tended to come in a little bit high, which showed his inexperience as far as takedowns were concerned, but he was able to successfully shut down the remaining attempts. A look for him to try and sprawl his way to the shot, punch, attack. But overall, his last opponent was able to get on his hips relatively frequently, and if Blaydes is able to do that, that's not a good thing, because Blaydes is so powerful, so strong, and such a capable wrestler. We saw Ngannou come out with a wider stance after getting taken down in the first round. He came out with a much wider stance in the second round. I expect to see something similar in this matchup. As I said, he moves very well. He's very light on his feet for a big man, which he'll need to do. But then sometimes he tends to plod forward and stick right in front of his opponent. If they do tie up in the clinch, look for him to land hard knees. But again, I don't think Blaydes is going to try and stay vertical for very long. He is very takedown focused, and I think that's what he's going to come out with. If Ngannou can keep this fight standing, he has some very good strikes. He landed a very hard uppercut for the knockout victory. He has a big right hand, a very nice left hook, and he throws them in combination. I really like that about him. A lot of people, shit all over his striking coming into that matchup, but I thought it looked very good in that position. He was also mixing in some fakes and feints there to throw his opponent off. Ultimately, this fight comes down to whether Ngannou can stay on his feet or not. He has a big striking advantage. He's a pretty decent grappler in his own right, but he's facing that first real American wrestler, which is a tough opposition to be put against. The takedowns he's given up against lesser grapplers are certainly concerning. I expect to see a lot of takedowns, a lot of ground and pound. Blaydes wears him down. Ability to go deep into fights in recent fights is certainly encouraging for the American. And my prediction is Curtis Blaydes to defeat Francis Ngannou by TKO. In the co-main event of the evening, we have the Black Beast, Derrick Lewis, 14 wins, 4 losses, and 1 no contest, representing the good US of A, against former heavyweight champion Gabriel Gonzaga of Brazil, the current record of 17 wins and 10 losses. Neither one of these fighters are currently ranked. Now, Lewis is replacing Russian striker Ruslan Magomedov with approximately 1 month to prepare for this matchup. He fought just 2 months ago, so this will be his second fight of 2016. For Gonzaga, he's coming off a matchup in which he snapped a 3-fight losing streak. Unfortunately for Gabriel Gonzaga, it was arguably one of the... Not arguably, it was one of the worst fights to ever grace the octagon. Period. Now, Lewis comes in 1 inch taller. He'll have a 3-inch reach advantage, and he will be about 15 to maybe even 20 pounds heavier, depending on what Gabe weighs in at. For Gonzaga, he's a BJ black belt. He has 8 wins by submission, 4 in the UFC. He also has 8 wins by knockout, including some noteworthy knockouts over Dave Herman and, more recently, Sean Jordan. For Lewis, 13 wins by knockout, 1 submission victory. He's 0-2 on the scorecards. He does have 6 first-round finishes, but he is a remarkable 8 wins and 3 losses in fights that go beyond the opening round, so he certainly has shown his ability to knock guys out. He carries his power well into the later rounds. For Gonzaga, the big number that stands out to me, he also has 8 losses by knockout to go along with his 8 victories. In the UFC, over the last 5 years, he's gone over to the first round 5 times. He has a current record of 2 wins and 3 losses. And you look at those 2 wins, and they are not remarkable. It was a terrible matchup with one of the main eventers in Ben Rothwell a couple of years ago, where they both gassed. I believe they were fighting at altitude. It was horrific. No, it wasn't. They weren't fighting at altitude. But it was a horrific fight nonetheless. And then, of course, that dog's breakfast against Konstantin Rokhin we just saw. Now, Lewis... He has been stopped twice in his career, both by knockout, by Matt Mitrione and Sean Jordan, both in the UFC. So certainly his chin is not ironclad. But again, at a heavyweight, if anybody hits anybody, including Roy Nelson or Mark Hunt, you are eventually going to go down. Now, both fighters, for the most part, have the majority of their success on the mat, but in vastly different ways. For Gabriel Gonzaga, his success comes in the form of submissions. For Derrick Lewis, it comes via top position, murder, death, ground and pound. I'm going to punch your face a la Negan, or with a baseball bat, Lucille. I'm going to smash your brains in. Questionable finish to the finale last night. I liked it. My wife hated it, so it's a wash at my house. For Lewis, overall, he was taken down 5 times when he fought Victor Pesta. Even though he won that matchup, and we know why he won, because he wore Pesta out trying to take him down. He was taken down 5 times, and probably would have lost a decision, or it would have been very close had he not got the finish. He forced Pesta to work in that matchup, tired him out, and stopped them. But you also look at guys like Jack May and Ruan Ponce who were able to take him down once. Overall, he's a 58% takedown defense, so he's not an easy guy to take down, but it's certainly there if you have the skills. And Gabriel Gonzaga is probably the most talented grappler he has faced. But again, I said he forces opponents to work hard. When they shoot in, he'll look for that sprawl and he'll land shots. And he can even turn that opportunity into an offensive gain for himself by countering. We'll talk about that momentarily. For Gonzaga, against Konstantin Rokhin, who doesn't have a great grappling game, had a similar situation against Victor Pesta where he got taken down. It was basically the reverse. He landed some big shots against Pesta early, but then got put on his back and lost a decision. Gonzaga only landed 2 takedowns against Rokhin. He landed 3 against Rothwell and 2 against Eduardo Oliveira earlier in his career, and 2 against Mirko Krokop. So he's not a big volume takedown guy. He likes to go for the finish with the submissions as soon as he gets the, once he gets the fight to the ground, he gets control. So it's kind of one of those things where he gets you down. He's probably going to try and finish you once he gets you down. Now, keep in mind that Mirko Cro Cop fight, he won the early action in that matchup, got takedowns, got top position, but despite that, wore down, took some damage, and that was it. He was finished, and Cro Cop put him away, and that's something to keep in mind when you look at a guy like Derrick Lewis, who fights a very similar style as far as the sequence, how his fight paces out, defends early takedowns, gets on top, and busts guys up. Gonzaga, when he fought Arokin, he looked exceptionally hesitant to engage. One strike could have stopped that fight at any point in time as far as Arokin has power. And despite knowing the grappling issues, Gonzaga didn't do a heck of a lot and wasn't able to finish him once getting on top. For Arokin, he was able to sprawl out of some early takedown attempts, and Gonzaga wasn't driving through again because he wasn't fully committing. For Lewis, if opponent shoots on him, he will sprawl. He uses kind of a combination whizzer hip toss. We saw him do it against Damian Grabowski. And he puts his opponent on his back. He's very strong. Once he gets on top, he's kind of patient. I like that. Looks to have top control before opening up with big shots. Once he postures up and starts throwing, look out, you're in trouble. Against Grabowski, he was kind of standing up, holding his legs, whipping him to the side, and launching big shots, and ultimately finished the fight with a big, devastating shot from top position. Where Lewis's aggression did get him caught was when he fought Matt Mitrione. He walked right into a counter and got knocked out. We saw Sean Jordan in a similar situation, got counter-struck by Gabriel Gonzaga and got knocked out as well. Lewis, he needs to be careful when attacking Gonzaga, but Gabe has shown a willingness to sit back and try and counter, but can also cost him because if he can't land that big counter strike, he's going to be constantly outworked and put on the wrong end of the striking exchanges. Overall, Gabe is the far more gifted grappler, but his chin, his confidence, and his cardio, which is not good. His cardio is fairly poor as well. Have been significant detriments. Sorry for stumbling there. He dominated Mirko Cro Cop, but exhausted himself and got finished. I think Lewis will stuff the early takedowns. He will make Gabriel Gonzaga work exceptionally hard. He'll land some big shots when Gabe does get in close and really back him off and do some damage. Look for that sprawl and brawl until Lewis gets in top position, either does enough damage to put him away, or wears him down and tires him out and then puts him away. My prediction is Derrick Lewis to defeat Gabriel Gonzaga by TKO. And to cap off our heavyweight quartet, we're in the main event as the number 4 ranked fighter on the planet, Ben Rothwell, Big Ben Rothwell, if you will, 36-9-0, takes on the former heavyweight champion, the 5th ranked junior Sagano dos Santos of Brazil, with a record of 17 wins and 4 losses. And again, sometimes the UFC doesn't update these records on their head-to-head page, which is annoying, but that's what we'll go with for now. Now, these fighters are in 2 vastly different places in their careers. For Junior dos Santos, he's trying to hold on to his position in the division. He's coming off a pretty tough loss. He's apparently not the fighter he used to be. Certainly didn't look that great in his last matchup. He is slipping, and he's trying to hold on to that position. For Rothwell, he is on a roll, and he's trying to gain respect within the division and earn a title shot. And a lot of people see this as Rothwell could have been granted a shot at the title, but instead he's been given another obstacle that the UFC is hoping he can't get over. If he beats Junior dos Santos, especially in emphatic style, like he's been putting other guys away by, like, for example, submitting Josh Barnett, holy shit, it's going to be hard to deny him a shot at the title, even though there are guys certainly ahead of him, or not ahead of him, but certainly guys that are positioned ahead of him. Physically, both guys 6'4", 1-inch reach advantage to Big Ben. Rothwell is the heavier man by 25 to 30 pounds, but the Brazilian is 2 years younger. Now for JDS, 12 wins by knockout. He is coming off the second knockout loss of his career. He's 2-1 on the in fights ended by submission and 3-1 on the scorecards. For Big Ben, 20 wins by knockout, 13 wins by submission, 3-3 on the scorecards. He has 4 losses by KO and 2 submission defeats as well. Now, despite his 6 finishes that he suffered in his career, Rothwell is exceptionally durable. He's very tough, and he's very unorthodox. Conversely, and he's very confident right now as well. Versus Junior dos Santos, he seems to be questioning his confidence, especially coming off that Overeem fight where he seemed very tentative. His chin is kind of a question mark now, where Overeem was able to knock him out, and you wonder if the wars with Cain Velasquez and the battle with Stipe Miocic has that just taken too much out of him and his ability to take damage, and he is just, as a human being, his physical capacity to suffer and go through that type of damage, it's not what it used to be. Now for Ben, you look at what he's been doing of late, it's pretty remarkable. He has been making a run based on losing fights early and then rallying to win them. Brandon Vera's fight was very close, but he ultimately stopped it. He was getting outstruck by Alistair Overeem before he knocked him out. Matt Mitrione was having a lot of success before he submitted Matt Mitrione, and Josh Barnett won the opening round and was holding his own and doing very well, and I had him winning that fight before Barnett caught him and submitted him, the first man to officially submit him via submission. I think Cro Cop had a submission win due to strikes back in the day. Now Rothwell, he's fighting with confidence, he's very awkward, he can do damage, and he can absorb punishment. Those are all, that's a scary combination for a guy like that, even though technically he's not the most refined fighter. He takes a lot of punches, absorbs what his opponents throw, and still pushes forward. He throws some very quick, short punches, especially in the clinch. Look for an uppercut both at range and at distance to be one of his primary strikes. For the Brazilian, he had one really good striking sequence against Alistair Overeem, and then he got knocked out right after. He threw a nice combination upstairs and then ripped to the body with a 1-2, and that's what he needs to do consistently. And when he's on his game, that's what he does. He has a very nice left jab, which he'll throw to set up his power strikes. He'll go to the body as well, and then try to come over top with a big right hand. And again, against Overeem, he wasn't letting his hands go, and ultimately saw what happened, that Overeem is a dangerous striker, and that probably played a little bit into Junior's mindset, unfortunately. Big question is, has he lost his confidence altogether, or was it just a bad night? At his best, I said he jabs to the body, he works his combinations, he moves forward, and he was moving forward against Overeem, he just wasn't attacking. Again, I think the threat of Overeem was backing him off a little bit. What I like with Junior, he averages almost 2 strikes more per minute against Rothwell, compared to Ben Rothwell, and Rothwell tends to get hit almost over a half strike more per minute than he actually hits his opponents. He's a very infrequent striker. He moves forward and he'll let stuff go, but he's not knocking guys out with big combinations. You know, he's against Brendan Schaub too. Brendan Schaub, you go back to that fight, that was another matchup where he got hurt, he was in trouble, and boom, he knocked Brendan Schaub out, took his soul. But he doesn't have a very consistent striking attack, and that's one thing in fights that he's not able to pull these miracle finishes off, that's going to show up. JDS, you know, he is very hard to take down. Honestly, I don't think he's going to give Rothwell the opportunity to submit him, where guys like Josh Barnett, who looked for a takedown, and Matt Mitrione, his brains went to shit, and he shot for a takedown as well and got submitted. Junior's not going to be looking for that, I don't think, unless he gets rocked. I think Junior has the more consistent striking. He has the more clean striking. His chin is certainly a question mark. But I think Junior's going to outland him. He'll put that power on Rothwell. I think he lets his hands go a little bit better. He's going to come out motivated in this matchup based on his last performance. I think Rothwell's willingness to take shots is also going to catch up with him, because against Brandon Vera, who's a smaller heavyweight, who obviously fought a light heavyweight, he was taking a lot of shots and absorbing them and walking forward. Junior's not the type of guy you want to be letting tee off on you, especially with that big right hand if he lets it go. I want to see Junior get back to the more diversified boxing and not just head hunting, but I think he will do that. But Ben's the type of guy, he's going to let you hit him. And that's the thing with Junior. I don't think you want that to happen. Rothwell, I think, has to finish Junior Dos Santos. He's not going to win a decision with his lack of output. Over 5 rounds, certainly lots of opportunities, but I think Junior gets the better of him. He's only 1 fight removed from a fight. I picked Stipe to beat Junior in that fat fight. I thought he did, but I thought Junior fought exceptionally well against a very talented fighter who's about to challenge for the title. We could see Rothwell clip and hurt Junior during an exchange. I think Junior gets the better of it, and my prediction is Junior Dos Santos to defeat Ben Rothwell by decision, of all things. So those are my 6 main card predictions. I have not looked at the odds for this matchup, so it's very interesting to see who the underdogs, who the favorites. I do know that at this point in time, Derrick Lewis is the favorite against Gabriel Gonzaga, and Ben Rothwell is the favorite against Junior Dos Santos. So those are the only 2 odds I do know. I have to look at the rest of them after recording this, but I wanted to kind of stay away and see. Hopefully that didn't influence me as well, and just go on based on who I think is the better fighter and not who I think is being set as the favorite. Regardless, my preliminary predictions will be available at kamikazeoverdrive.net. Don't forget to check out that Global Warriors FC fight card. It's going to be fantastic, especially if you're in the area. It's certainly worth checking out. The seats are relatively well priced for the type of action you're going to see. They put on some very good cards, and I hope to be doing some more graphic design work with them in the future. That's very fun. And as always, guys, enjoy the fights, and we have a big matchup coming just a week away. So we've had a layoff, and now we're right back into it. I'll see you guys after the bell. Take care.